From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. Mexican presidential candidate Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador promised that fighting violence and insecurity will be his priority if elected on Sunday's election. The left-wing candidate spoke in front of 5,000 supporters in the city of Acapulco, where he held a rally on Tuesday. He also promised to investigate the disappearance of the 43 students from Ayotzinapa that took place 4 years ago, calling for justice on this case. Last year was considered the most violent year in Mexican history, with almost 26,000 murders, the highest since 1997, according to official numbers. López Obrador is currently leading the polls.
We have to fight the increase of violence and insecurity in the country. That is our biggest problem and what is affecting our economy.
Meanwhile, the parents of the 43 missing students are still demanding justice. Let's hear from our correspondent in Mexico City, Pablo Pérez, with more details.
Not even the rain could stop the parents, family members and classmates of the 43 missing Ayotzinapa students from taking to the streets, as they do every 26th of the month, to demand justice from the government, justice that has so far been denied them, despite the fact that several international petitions and even the Mexican courts have ruled in their favor, condemning the investigation carried out by the prosecutor's office. They say this investigation is flawed and based on declarations obtained under torture. 4 years after the mass disappearance and 5 days before the general elections, the parents continue to take to the streets. They've made their demands known to the presidential candidates in the hope that the new government won't just make the case disappear.
That was Pablo Pérez from Mexico City. And with the election fast approaching, let's take a look at another of the contenders in the race, Ricardo Anaya of Por México al Frente. Electoral polls put him in second place behind leftist López Obrador.
Ricardo Anaya is the youngest of 4 presidential contenders. The 39-year-old candidate is the leader of Por México al Frente, an alliance between the conservative Acción Nacional party along with the progressive Revolución Democrática and Movimiento Ciudadano parties. Since the beginning of the electoral process, the Wonder Boy, as his colleagues call him, has been the candidate with the most expensive campaign. In the first 45 days alone, he spent almost $9 million.
México va a cambiar. El PRI ya se va.
Mexico is changing. The PRI will be gone, and the question here is, what kind of change do we want? Do we want to aim for the future, or do we want to get stuck in the past?
Un cambio atrapado en las ideas del pasado.
His presidential aspirations split the party, Acción Nacional, where he worked in various different roles. He was a local and federal deputy and president of the party. Many of those who helped him along in his career have now turned their backs on him. That's the case of ex-President Felipe Calderón and his wife Margarita Zavala.
He totally canceled the inner democracy and citizen participation of the party. Until now, no new citizen has been accepted as new member of the leadership, and the inner registry was manipulated and rendered useless.
The Senate President, Ernesto Cordero, also from Acción Nacional, has joined the wave of critics against Anaya.
Anaya is capaz de traicionar a su propia madre.
Anaya is able to betray his own mother if that gives him half a point of popularity. A greedy politician that cares so much for public opinion is always dangerous.
The prosecutor's office has been investigating him for months for money laundering.
A lot of money was invested for him to win. He came for money.
We agreed on a modern energy reform because we are part of a new generation that knows what change is, that doesn't fear world progress.
Regarding security, he proposes to continue using armed forces to fight organized crime, a strategy that has failed since 2006, leaving around 250,000 dead people and over 100,000 missing. Regarding the economy, he said he'll invite foreign private investment. For that, he will create a special unit for public and private contracts. He'll also continue with the deeply unpopular education reform, which has been rejected by most citizens.
Now to the United States, where Vice President Mike Pence visited Brazil on Tuesday for a meeting with President Michel Temer to discuss issues on migration and U.S. trade restrictions.
U.S. Vice President Mike Pence touches down in Brazil. His arrival this Tuesday morning marks the first stop of a Latin America tour focused on business, immigration, as well as Venezuela. In fact, shortly after his arrival, Pence sent a message to any migrants trying to enter the United States: if you're illegal, don't come.
Don't risk your lives or the lives of your children by trying to come to the United States on a road run by drug smugglers and human traffickers. If you can't come legally, don't come at all.
The immigration crisis in the U.S. has also affected Brazil. According to the government, 50 Brazilian children were separated from their parents as part of Donald Trump's policy to separate families that enter the United States illegally. President Michel Temer said that was one of the talking points in their meeting. Another, business. The two countries are meaning to increase their cooperation on space exploration and the steel and defense industries.
We're going to bring the Brazilian Space Agency and NASA together. We're going to progress in technology. We will deepen our mutual efforts for the technological development and prosperity of our people. We also talked about reforms to bring growth to Brazil. And after telling this to the Vice President, I noted the moment is right for American investors.
The issue of Venezuela was also on the agenda. Brazil is hosting more than 4,000 Venezuelan migrants in the northern state of Roraima. The United States has imposed heavy sanctions on the Caracas administration, and it's seeking regional support for further pressure. Both Temer and Pence said they hope democracy and normality could be restored.
Venezuela's collapse is creating a humanitarian crisis, leading to widespread deprivation, the denial of basic services, and starvation. And it's spurred the largest cross-border mass exodus in the history of our hemisphere.
On Wednesday, the U.S. Vice President will be visiting the Amazon region of Manaus, where those Venezuelan migrants are being housed, before he travels on to Ecuador. Mi Alberti, Telesur, São Paulo.
Still in Brazil, members of the Free Lula camp reported an attack carried by a driver who fired once and tried to run over 4 people. The attack occurred on Tuesday when the 4 people were returning to the camp from a demonstration in support of former President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva. According to the victims, a driver tried to run over them several times, and 10 minutes later, the same driver returned and shot at the tents. Members at the camp denounced continuous threats by fascist groups. Lula is currently serving a 12-year sentence in Curitiba over corruption charges. In the biggest primary upset in the United States for a decade, a 28-year-old Puerto Rican woman has defeated a senior House Democrat for the nomination in New York. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a former organizer for Bernie Sanders, ran her campaign saying it was time for New York to have a real progressive, not another friend of Wall Street. She defeated the incumbent Joseph Crowley, who was seen as a likely successor to Nancy Pelosi as a Democratic leader in the lower house with 57% of the vote.
Who has New York been choosing?
A U.S. federal judge in San Diego, California has ruled that immigration agents should no longer separate immigrant parents and children at the border with Mexico. The judge ordered the government to reunite parents with their children aged under 5 within 14 days and with older ones within 30 days. The nationwide injunction was issued as part of a lawsuit filed by the American Civil Liberties Union after the separation of more than 2,300 migrant children since May. In another attack on U.S. President Donald Trump's zero-tolerance policy towards immigrants, 17 U.S. states have sued the government for separating children from their parents. In a complaint filed with a U.S. District Court in Seattle, the states argued that the administration's policy was unconstitutional because it was motivated by hostility and a desire to harm immigrants arriving from Latin America. And in another battle over immigration, there has been outrage over the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to uphold Trump's ban on people traveling from several Muslim-majority countries. Protesters gather in New York and Washington against this ruling. This is a big setback for anti-discrimination advocates, as it blocks entry into the United States by most people from Iran, Libya, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen. The ban also affects some officials from Venezuela.
We are outraged, we are disappointed. As Americans from all backgrounds and all faiths, we are coming together to show that no matter what the Supreme Court has decided, the American people have decided that we will stick together and that we are going to work very hard to try to overcome this policy.
We're taking a short break now, but join us after this video from our multimedia team.
This woman don't want to let a little girl sell some water. She calling the police on an 8-year-old little girl. You can hide all you want. The whole world gonna see you, boo.
Welcome back. The law regulating Colombia's special jurisdiction for peace will be considered in Congress this Wednesday. The jurisdiction for peace is the mechanism of transitional justice created as part of the peace agreement with the FARC to judge those responsible for crimes during the country's armed conflict.
The Senate President Efraín Cepeda said on Wednesday, June 27th, is the final day to vote on the enforcement of the special jurisdiction for peace.
I announced to Colombians and to Congress that on Wednesday, with or without agreements, we will put the drafted law forward for consideration. Today is the last day for the Commission to reach an agreement. If they disagree on certain topics, then the final decision will go to a vote.
Iván Duque, the elected president, called for unity following his victory. However, in less than 24 hours, he and his supporters from Centro Democrático insisted in delaying the special jurisdiction for peace debate.
This week, and after the statement of the Constitutional Court, the government will listen to the proposals made in Congress in order to reach an agreement.
According to some Congress members, Centro Democrático doesn't want the special jurisdiction to go on a vote, and instead, they want to make people vote for substantial changes to the agreements.
What I can see is that they don't want to approve the JEP. They want to break it and send this, as well as other topics, to a referendum.
In spite of the difficulties put forward by Centro Democrático, and even if Congress doesn't vote, there is still a way to continue with the special jurisdiction for peace.
There are different ways. One of them is reminding the president that there are certain constitutional circumstances related to exceptional situations in which he can decide things without previous consultation.
The Verification Commission of the UN in Colombia asked Congress to remove the obstacles and to regulate the special jurisdiction for peace, so the peace process, justice, and the rights of victims can be respected.
Still in Colombia, the use of glyphosate on crops is coming back, although it was banned because of the damage it causes to people's health. President Juan Manuel Santos announced that the fumigations will be carried out with a low-level drone system. Colombia has a long history of spraying pesticides, mostly glyphosate, over vast coca-producing regions. In 2017, Colombia's Constitutional Court prohibited this practice, arguing that it threatens local communities and the environment. Outgoing Paraguayan President Horacio Cartes has said that he will give up his attempt to be sworn in as a senator in the face of opposition from inside his own Colorado party to what is widely seen as an unconstitutional maneuver. Let's see this.
I am at the session chamber of the Tocumen Congress. The legislators are discussing an agreement that was signed in May 2017 between Horacio Cartes and the Argentinian president Mauricio Macri. The Cartes-Macri agreement recognizes a debt of $4 billion and removes sovereignty of Paraguay over the binational hydroelectric Yacyretá. For Paraguay, the debt is part of the contributions made by Argentina since the military dictatorship in Videla. The senators who opposed to the agreement said that the agreement would mean a debt of $4 billion. President Horacio Cartes tried to resign before August 15 to become a senator. However, he resigned his resignation after protests, and now Cartes will have to finish his term.
That was Osvaldo Sayas from Asunción. Chile commemorated the 110th anniversary of the birth of President Salvador Allende. Social movements gathered in capital city Santiago and in Allende's birthplace, Valparaíso, to pay tribute to the leftist leader who is recognized for the defense of his country, sovereignty, and equality for Chilean people. In office, Allende promoted social reforms focusing on education, healthcare, and an agrarian reform. Allende died during the military coup led by Augusto Pinochet in September 1973, and Pinochet ruled Chile for 17 years. The Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza met with Prime Minister Gaston Brown in Antigua and Barbuda. The two held a working meeting and discussed strengthening cooperation in the region, including a new phase of development for the Petrocaribe project.
We are leaving a meeting with the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston Brown, brother of Venezuela, friend of people that are seeking their liberty on our continent and the world. We looked over bilateral revisions for the future, a new cooperation project, new plans, new ideas for Petrocaribe. Definitely Antigua is going to be part of the Alba Bank. There are some possible projects there. We are very happy to be reunited because of their support to Venezuela in the midst of aggressions. Support is always strengthened by the people in the Caribbean. They are always willing to cooperate and collaborate with Venezuela.
The government and people of Antigua and Barbuda stand in solidarity with the government and people of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. And we ask you to continue to defend your democracy, to continue to support the advancement of the people of Venezuela.
The Peruvian government says it will ask the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht for $1.5 billion in damages. According to the Minister of Justice, this is repayment for Odebrecht's crimes of corruption in the country. The state took into account the alleged paying of millions of dollars in bribes to officials and politicians in exchange for political favors. In Ecuador, a British lesbian couple who already won a judicial battle to register their daughter with their surname of both mothers announced that they will also register a second child in the same way. In the Ecuadorian civil registry, if this civil registry refuses to register their second child, they say they will go to court again. Helen Bicknell and Nicola Rothen started a legal battle in 2012 after the civil registry refused to put their eldest daughter, Satya, with their last name. But last May, the Constitutional Court ruled in favor of this couple.
It's not just a passport. We can travel with the British passport, but without an ID for the children, I really don't know if it will be possible for us to go and come back. So really, I'm grateful.
It was a bit of a shock, and Santia was so sweet. She said, "We won, we won, we won." What did we win? But she was so excited. We won, we won. What does it mean?
The UNESCO has removed the Mesoamerican coral reef in Belize from its list of threatened World Heritage Sites. The Central American country was applauded for its visionary steps to protect it. The reef is the second longest in the world and spent nearly a decade on the endangered list. On our World Cup update, let's take a look at today's matches. Brazil will try to qualify to the next round, facing Serbia. Switzerland will play against Costa Rica. Germany will face South Korea, and Mexico will play against Sweden. Argentina's victory against Nigeria was a blast for its fans across the world. Some even celebrated at -20-degree temperature. A group of workers in the Antarctic Marambio base camp went outside to celebrate their national team despite the strong winds. Argentina needed a win in order to qualify for the round of 16s, and it was Marcos Rojo who scored the winning goal in the 86th minute, because a draw would have eliminated Argentina. A former Russian referee has collected over 800 vintage and artistic footballs over the past 30 years. Mikhail Koshelev has put the best of his collection on display on the city of Sochi, including 19th century sheepskin footballs as well as items used by players in the latest World Cup tournament. His dream is to open an interactive museum where visitors can see the changes that the ball has undergone over time. And we'll take another short break, but you'll be back after this video from our multimedia team.
أنا شاركت في مسيرة العودة الكبرى، كانت وقفة تضامنية سلمية. أثناء المشاركة تم استهدافي من قبل الاحتلال الإسرائيلي، إصابة مباشرة من قبل القناص. طبعا الإصابة كانت في القدم اليمنى والقدم اليسرى.
ورسالتي للناس المجتمعين في روسيا في كأس العالم انهم ينظروا للقضية الفلسطينية انها قضية عادلة، ويجب ان ينظروا الينا بعين الرحمة كشعب يستحق الحياة، كشعب به جرحى ومنكوبين وفقراء وذوي إعاقة، كلهم لديهم حقوق، كلهم لهم حقوق.
Thanks for joining us again. After nearly 2 decades, an Eritrean delegation visited Ethiopia, seeking to ease hostilities. Here's more on that and other stories making headlines around the world.
At least 3 people have been killed and more than 30 were injured in a fire at a construction site in the city of Sejong in South Korea. Many of the victims are Chinese workers. Police have been struggling to control the fire as there is a lot of flammable materials stacked up inside the construction site.
We could see nothing after the fire broke out. The 2 of us panicked and walked around in the room for 3 to 4 minutes until we found an acrylic plate. We were able to breathe some fresher air by climbing up on the plate.
For the first time in nearly 2 decades, an official delegation from Eritrea has visited Ethiopia, aiming to ease years of hostility between the neighbors. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed warmly greeted the Eritrean delegation. Both sides are set to work on high-level talks to settle what is considered as one of Africa's most difficult military standoffs. The border war between the two sides has killed more than 80,000 people since the 1990s. Zimbabwe's President Emerson Mnangagwa has said that he suspects that dissidents from his own party linked to former president's wife, Grace Mugabe, were behind an explosion at a rally he attended last week. 2 people died in the blast that rocked the stadium in Bulawayo as Mnangagwa was leaving. Last November, Mnangagwa replaced Robert Mugabe as the new president in a bloodless coup.
Now let's learn about Poncho, a Spanish police dog that has become the new expert in cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR. Poncho surprised an audience during a demonstration exercise with its CPR technique. The police dog performed compression-like jumps on an officer's chest, and he even checked his breathing. He wore a police siren on its back. Poncho's skills made the audience broke into applause. The video helped the local police in Madrid launch a campaign to promote dog adoption. And before we end our show, remember you can catch our special World Cup program with Argentina football star Diego Maradona. De la mano del 10, the World Cup, according to Maradona, will air only on Telesur every night during the tournament in Russia. These are the times to watch it, so don't miss out. And with that, we come to the end of this news brief. But there's another stories, as you know, you can find on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And you can also find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.